Alexander Zverev is playing the best tennis of his entire life. He just won his first Grand Slam. He has reached 2 major finals in a row. And on Sunday night, standing on center court, with the runner-up trophy in his hands, he said something about Jannik Sinner that the whole tennis world is still repeating. It was not bitter, it was something harder than bitter. It was the truth, spoken by the one man with the most reason not to say it out loud. Let's get into it. To understand the weight of what Zverev admitted, you first have to understand the match he just played, because this was not a beatdown, this was a war. The Wimbledon final between Jannik Sinner and Alexander Zverev lasted 3 hours and 46 minutes, and for the first 2.5 sets, not a single service game was broken, not one. 2 of the biggest servers in the sport stood on opposite baselines and simply refused to blink. They split the first 2 sets, a tie-break each, and it was Zverev, not Sinner, who drew first blood. The German took the opening set. For one glorious stretch, it looked like the night the streak would finally end. And then Sinner did what Sinner does. He did not panic. He did not overhit. He simply raised his level 1 notch higher than a mortal can sustain, and stayed there. He took the second set tiebreak. He broke through in the third. He closed out the fourth. 6-7, 7-6, 6-3, 6-4. And here is the statistic that tells the entire story of why Zverev cannot get over this man. Across the whole final, across nearly 4 hours of the highest pressure tennis on the planet, Alexander Zverev earned exactly 1 breakpoint. 1. That is not losing a match. That is being suffocated in slow motion. Now here is the cruel part, the part that makes this rivalry so fascinating right now. Zverev is not the choking, fragile version of himself that the tennis world spent years mocking. That player is gone. The man who showed up at Wimbledon this year is a monster. Just weeks ago, he finally broke through and won his maiden Grand Slam title at the French Open. At 29 years old, after a decade of near misses and heartbreak, he arrived at Wimbledon having never once reached the quarterfinals here in his entire career, and he tore through the draw all the way to the final. Since Roland Garros, he has lost exactly 2 matches out of 17. He is by any measure, one of the 2 or 3 best players alive. And it still was not enough, because the other man is Jannik Sinner, and there was a moment in that third set that told you everything about the strange respect between these two. At 3-all, Zverev lost his footing and crashed to the turf, his right knee hitting the grass hard. He got up gingerly, rubbing at the joint, clearly shaken, and Sinner, from the other side of the net, walked over to help his rival back to his feet before the point was even restarted. No gamesmanship, no cold stare. Just one champion checking on another, in the middle of the biggest match of the season. It was a small thing, but it framed the whole rivalry. These 2 are not enemies, they are 2 men chasing the same summit, and only one of them keeps reaching it. So when Zverev stepped up to the microphone after the loss, he did not make excuses. He did not talk about the wind, or the bounce, or the calendar. He looked at the situation dead in the eye, and called it exactly what it is. He said Sinner is still the best player in the world, and that he believes it completely. He said there are maybe 3 players on earth who can even challenge him, and that all of them, himself included, have to keep working just to get close. He said he had challenged Sinner that day, and then he delivered the line that cut deepest, admitting it was not enough, because he was still the one sitting there, having lost the match. Quick one for you before we go deeper, because I want your honest read. Is anyone going to beat Jannik Sinner consistently in the next few years? Type nobody if you think he is simply on another level. Type Alcaraz if you think only one man has the key. Drop it below. I read every comment, and if you love these breakdowns of the rivalries actually shaping tennis, hit subscribe before you scroll on. Because the head-to-head number is almost hard to believe. 10. Alexander Zverev has now lost 10 consecutive matches to Jannik Sinner. 10 in a row. He even turned it into a joke during the trophy ceremony, telling Sinner with a smile that he does not really like him anymore after losing 9 straight, right before the 10th was official. The crowd laughed, but underneath the joke was something genuinely staggering. A player good enough to win a Grand Slam, good enough to reach back-to-back major finals, good enough to beat almost everyone else on tour, cannot solve one specific human being, and it is not for lack of trying, or lack of talent. It is because Sinner has found a level of consistency that the sport has not seen since the absolute peak of the Big 3. Think about what that means. Zverev brought his best. He served like a demon. He held serve for 2.5 sets without facing real danger. He won the opening set of a Wimbledon final against the defending champion. And the margin, when you strip it all down, was 1 break point in 4 hours. Sinner does not beat you by blowing you off the court. He beats you by removing every single opening, by making you feel that if you drop your serve even once, the set is already gone. Zverev said as much himself, that against Sinner you have to be perfect on your own serve, because the moment you slip, it is over. That is not a tactical problem you can fix with a coach. That is a wall. And yet, this is the part that makes Zverev's admission so compelling rather than sad. He is not giving up. He said this is the tennis he wants to play, the aggressive, front foot style he has finally committed to, and that the more he plays it, the better he will get. He pointed to the evidence: a first Grand Slam in Paris, a first Wimbledon final in London. Something, he said, is clearly working. He is 29, he has waited his entire career to feel like he genuinely belongs in these matches, and he has arrived at that belief at the exact moment the sport produced a version of Jannik Sinner that might be nearly unbeatable. There was something else in his speech too, that revealed how much this run meant to him. He thanked the Wimbledon crowd for 2 weeks unlike anything he had felt before, saying that every time he walked onto court it was packed, and that he had never experienced support like that at this tournament in his life. This is a player who for years was the pantomime villain of the sport, booed as often as he was cheered. And here he was, at 29, finally feeling the love of the most famous crowd in tennis, finally believing for the first time that he could actually lift this trophy. He said it plainly, this was the first time he genuinely believed he could win Wimbledon. That belief is brand new, and it ran straight into the one man capable of extinguishing it. That is the trap Zverev is caught in, and it is worth sitting with. There have been eras where being the second best player in the world meant a fistful of Grand Slam titles. Zverev is playing in an era where the man ahead of him drops one breakpoint in a final and calls it a day at the office. The ranking gap tells the same story. Zverev trails Sinner by nearly 5,000 points. That is not a gap you close in a month. That is a gap you close by beating this man on the biggest stages, over and over, and right now Zverev is 0 for 10 in exactly those moments. So what did Alexander Zverev really call out after the Wimbledon final? He called out the reality that the rest of the tour is quietly refusing to say, that Jannik Sinner, at 24, with 5 Grand Slams and a defense of his Wimbledon crown, is not just winning. He is operating on a plane where a career-best version of a Grand Slam champion can throw everything he has at him, and still walk away with the smaller trophy and a smile that barely hides the frustration. Zverev looked directly at that truth and said it anyway, because he is honest enough to know that pretending otherwise would only slow down his own climb. The beautiful, brutal thing about this rivalry is that both of these players are getting better at the same time. Zverev is finally the champion he always threatened to become. And it may still not matter, because the man standing across the net has decided that good enough is not a phrase that applies to him. Zverev will keep coming. The big tournaments, as he pointed out, are always just around the corner. But until he finds a way to steal even one of these from Sinner, the story writes itself. The best years of Alexander Zverev's career are colliding head-on with a player who might just be too good for anyone, and that is the most dangerous kind of greatness there is. If this one landed for you, do me a favor and tap that like button before you go. It is the single biggest thing that tells YouTube to push these breakdowns out to other tennis fans who would never see them otherwise. And if you want more on the rivalry that is going to define the next decade of this sport, subscribe and stick around. There is a lot more coming.